listening to Overwatch League Daily, your daily source for Overwatch League news, scores, and more. Here's your host, KickedTripod.
Good morning, Overwatch League fans. This is your Overwatch League daily episode for February 11th, 2018. Today, I'm joined by Overwatch writer and analyst Moirai to discuss yesterday's matches, including the Stage 1 championships. But first, here's the scoreboard brought to you by patreon.com/OWL Daily Show. Okay, we've got 5 matches to get through, so I apologize in advance. I'm going to do this as quickly as possible. Yesterday was a huge day for Overwatch esports. We had 2 matches that would directly affect the Stage 1 title matches, and then of course we also had the title matches as well. The first match would be a preview of things to come as NYXL would take on the Spitfire. In this one, NYXL would get the best of London, winning the series 3-2. Because London took at least 1 map, however, they were guaranteed a spot in the Stage 1 title matches. The other important match was the Boston Uprising taking on the Houston Outlaws. Each map was incredibly close, and we would again go to a tiebreaker map on Lijiang Tower. This map went the distance, but in the end it would be the Houston Outlaws barely coming out on top of Boston 3-2 and securing their spot in the Stage 1 title matches. In the Florida versus Philadelphia game, the Mayhem would fall just short of victory, losing to the Fusion 3-2. So that concludes the regular season of Stage 1. NYXL finishes at 9-1, the Spitfire, Valiant, Dynasty, and Outlaws finish at 7-3. The Uprising and Fusion finish at 6-4, and the Gladiators, Shock, Fuel, Mayhem, and Dragons all finish with a losing record for Stage 1. On to the title matches. The top-seeded team, NYXL, receives a bye. It would play the winner of the London Spitfire versus the Houston Outlaws game. Houston started out strong on Dorado, taking the map 2-1. On to Ilios, London would fight back and take a decisive 2-0 victory. At the half, were split 1-1. London didn't stop there as they would full hold the Outlaws on Temple of Anubis and go up 2-1. It's all up to Houston on Eichenwald to force a tiebreaker map. The Houston Outlaws haven't lost on Eichenwald all season. However, there is a first time for everything as the Spitfire would again hold the Outlaws and win the series 3-1. It's worth noting that the Houston Outlaws did not capture a single objective since map 1. Let's go on to the championship match. The winning team takes home $100,000 and the team that loses still wins $25,000. If you forgot, NYXL defeated London earlier today 3-2. Things look to go that way again as NYXL would win both Junkertown and Oasis going into the half. However, London would come back from the half with 2 strong showings on Horizon Lunar Colony and full holding NYXL on Numbani. On Dorado, the tiebreaker map, London on the back of Birdring would hold strong on defense and win the map, the series, and the stage 3-2. I sat down with Moirai to discuss these big matches from yesterday. So let's start by talking about the Spitfire and the Outlaws. The Outlaws started out hot on Dorado before getting held to 0 points in the next 3 maps. What did London figure out, or what did Houston stop doing for the match to go that way?
So the short, sweet, and simple answer is they shut down Jake. Spitfire shut down Jake. That was all they wrote. Next question. I'm kidding. So the long, more technical, need to fill time answer. They shut down Jake and Linkser, actually the DPS in general, really, for the Outlaws, and really forced support into weird positions to try to save those DPS. And that kind of resulted in just a general domino effect, and we know how it went from there. Outlaws had a bit more trouble when Jake was down, specifically on Anubis, where they were going really strong, and then Jake went down, and from there, it just kind of went to the wayside for Outlaws. Mostly because when Jake was in trouble or down or in some way, shape, or form needed supports, those supports would flock to him immediately to try to get him back up, and that was something that I think Spitfire picked up on very early on, but wasn't really able to exploit that until the later maps. Specifically, there was an instance on Dorado where Spitfire's Tracer specifically blinked past Bonnie, who was on Mercy, to get to Jake. And I think that kind of is very telling as to what Outlaws' comp is, and really what Spitfire's tier of priority list, I guess. What Spitfire's priority list is when it comes to the Outlaws, because I know that Jake's really the golden snitch, or they're the king, or whatever you want to call it, where if he goes down, the rest of the team is generally going to go down with him. So basically, it was the Spitfire DPS, so Prophet and Birdring's main goal to really take Jake out, and then it was Bonnie on Mercy, and then it was Linkser, who was the other DPS, and once they had that priority list down, I think that's when they really started to make moves, and when they really started to see some really awesome results. Yes, really. But yeah, I should also mention that this was really on Jake's Junkrat. His Tracer and his Soldier 76 are really strong, but not as strong as his Junkrat, which is just really overpowering. I say really a lot, I apologize, but it's just very overpowering, Jake's Junkrat, especially on Dorado, which is why they were pretty easily able to win that, because Jake could simply just kind of hide off in the corner in that one room that everyone goes to that's a Junkrat and quick play, yeah, that one, and just spam the mines and spam whatever primary fire they have, and then get the Riptire very easily, and it just kind of goes downhill from there. But yeah, so basically, Spitfire knew that Jake was the biggest target, and that they could also bait out getting the support players by harming Jake and making sure that that Jake was in a position where Spitfire could retaliate easily when the supports eventually came flocking in to give him aid.
Okay, so maybe I'm just salty here, but do you think that this match could have gone differently had Boston beat Houston and played the London Spitfire?
That's a very interesting question. Because Uprising obviously beat Spitfire earlier this year, and they've definitely improved from where they started. You know, the whole started from the bottom, now we hear thing, that's very accurate for Uprising. But as much as I would love to say that Boston would repeat the Spitfire upset, I don't think it would have worked this time around, unfortunately for them. Spitfire learns from their mistakes really quickly. They would have had time to really look at their film, really understand how Boston won, and then move on from that. Though I will say that both Boston and Houston are my teams to look out for in Stage 2, because those guys showed up when no one else thought they would, and they were major players in this stage. Like, I know there were so many memes about Boston, especially with the infamous reveal video, not as bad as Fusion's, but, you know, still bad, and, no one really expected, heck, no one even expected Fusion to show up, but they showed up big as well. This entire stage has been about people coming out of nowhere and just taking everyone by surprise and really giving people a run for their money. And the fact that we see Outlaws and Boston here really lends to that, as well as the fact that we didn't see Dynasty make the playoffs, which if you asked anyone at the start of this stage, they would have said Dynasty either would have taken it or would have been completely dominating and probably fell for some weird reason in the final. Like, no one expected them to be out at this stage, and yet they are. So I don't think Boston would have taken this one specifically, but I do think they have a chance. They have a huge chance. The same with Outlaws, the same with Fusion, going into Stage 2, especially with the Mercy meta starting to be literally patched out. But yeah, I don't think Boston would have taken it, but I think they will have a chance to do that in Stage 2.
Something that Blizzard's got a lot of flack from is the fact that these matches were played after a day full of games. Do you have any thoughts on that? Or do you like this?
So to be honest, I don't like it. I don't like it at all, and I'm sure the teams don't either. This was actually very similar to something that happened at E-League Boston, which is a CSGO tournament, one of the most recent major tournaments for CSGO. And SK Gaming played a best of 3 against Fnatic, won that in the quarterfinal, and then lost to Cloud9 in a 2-1 final the same day. And one of the big things that some people had said, and I believe some of the players had said too, was that it was really taxing to play 2 high-stakes games like that, especially ones that both of them went the distance in a best of 3. And I think that could have been a very, very big problem here if Spitfire hadn't clutched it out, because then the question would have been, would Spitfire had won if they had that extra rest that Nixel did? Now that all being said, Spitfire could have easily succumbed to simply being out of gas at the end of the day. But sitting in an arena for 10 hours playing 14 rounds, I don't think that's a great look on the league. I don't think that's a great scheduling thing. We had a couple of times this stage actually where a team played the last game of a day and then the first game of the next day, which really sucked. I think Shock had one. That's just coming straight to my head, but it showed because people were very tired. There were some lazy mistakes or just some careless mistakes that probably wouldn't have happened if everyone was really up to snuff and ready to go. But luckily, it looks like the commissioner of the Overwatch League, Nick Nanzer, he's already addressed this pretty quickly. And he tweeted out, quote, "Let me save you some time from tweeting at me," that's the @ symbol, "about the schedule. We are looking into playing stage final games on Sunday starting stage 2. That and other scheduling news soon." He then goes on to say in another tweet, "And we will definitely take care of anyone who has already bought tickets to stage 2 Saturday with free tickets for Sunday, should the change be made." So that's really cool because A, they're not going to be messing over players by making them play or making them sit around in an arena for 10 hours when there's such high stakes on the line, like, $125,000. And also it's really cool for the fans who are like, I want to support whoever's going to be in stage 2, even though I don't know who they are yet. And if they already bought, well, now they can, now they're guaranteed basically from this tweet. I mean, guaranteed, quote unquote, from this tweet, that they'll be able to see the Sunday games if they had already bought. So that's really cool. So I think, I don't think it's fair. I'm glad Spitfire was able to tough it out. But I also have faith in Owl to actually address this and make it better for everyone involved. So I'm also sure, obviously we were in high stakes, but people sitting around watching these games for 10 plus hours, that's not the best thing either. I don't think for casual viewership, at least. I know that, say, like my parents would not dive 10 hours deep into a game when I'm just trying to casually watch, and that's the type of person that Overwatch League needs to get in. So I don't think 10-hour marathons are the best thing from a viewer perspective either, but either way, it looks like Owl is going to try to fix this, and I'm really excited to see how this works out. Hopefully the Sunday games, or if they find some other creative way to do it, sure, why not, but yeah.
So NYXL were obviously in the driver's seat for the first half of that series. Where was London getting beat?
Pine and Widowmaker is a deadly combination, as actually was Jonak and Roadhog, because fun fact, he doesn't just play a deadly Zenyatta, he plays a deadly Roadhog, exactly what enemies want to see, right? But yeah, so Spitfire played a bit more passively on Junkertown than expected, at least in my opinion, which Nixel took all the way to the bank. Well, close to the bank, you get it. But, to be honest, there's not much that can counter an on-fire Pine and an equally as on-fire Jonak when they're doing that well in their respective heroes. They cooled off later, or in Pine's case, they were taken out, which gave Spitfire the edge, but I honestly think it was a lot due to those two performances that Nixel went as far as they did. Another reason is that originally Nixel was more likely to get off a hero that wasn't really working. Specifically, Libero's Pharah on Junkertown was perfect, because Spitfire had a tank-heavy combo that was completely vulnerable to air attacks, and once they figured that out, it was a very quick swap, and that game ended rather quickly with Libero on Pharah. And then on Dorado Defense, which is a little bit later, but we're going to use it as an example anyway, they had a similar thing where Libero changed to Junkrat, but by then they weren't being as aggressive as Spitfire, and that's what really actually cost them there. So in general, I think it was more so they were originally being, Spitfire was originally being outplayed by some god-tier movements from Pine and from Jonak, and eventually that turned around. But I do think if it wasn't for those two specifically, Nixel would have lost far more quickly.
So kind of building off of that then, what did you really specifically see London do to turn this series around?
So I think this answer is kind of twofold. For one, I definitely think that Nixel had a hard time keeping their supports alive come late game, late match, whatever you want to call it. And also, Janice didn't really have that strong of a series after Horizon. specifically on Horizon, actually, because there were a couple of pushes that were about to start, and he jumped in, and he ended up getting killed by a Widowmaker or something like that really, really hurt Nixel's push going into Horizon, and I think that just kind of snowballed eventually into the loss that they eventually suffered on that map, and I don't think he was very stand-outish in the other maps as well that Nixel lost. Also, Prophet basically had Arc on his radar the entire time, all throughout the match, and just getting Arc multiple times with rip tires and just catching him out in the open or in weird spots that many people don't usually catch him in. And also forcing Jonak when he was on Zenyatta and wasn't tearing it up on Roadhog, to get the Transcendence, even when it was completely against what should have happened. There was a section in Dorado where Jonak basically pulled his Transcend to save himself, but everyone else died because of a self-destruct that was thrown into a room, basically. And that's the kind of situation that really is ideal for Spitfire, because they force that and they force the ultimates and that sort of thing, but doesn't usually happen to Nixel. And that was very interesting to see, to say the least. It's kind of also my theory that Spitfire, Dynasty, Nixel, that those three teams specifically, when they're being passive or they're being quote-unquote lying in wait, that's when they really hit into issues. When they try to when they just try to take their time, that's when they really lose fights, as far as I'm concerned, at least. But when they're constantly harassing the other team and they're forcing split decisions on the enemy, and they're that's really where they shine, I think, because they can really exploit those mistakes that are made in the heat of moment from the enemy, and I think they're the most equipped to take on the kind of on-the-fly decisions that many people aren't, or many players on other teams aren't able to really react to as fast as they are. So every once in a while, we see Nixel, we see Dynasty, we see Spitfire start to do this very passive, lying in wait, methodical, quote unquote, sort of touch to whatever map they're playing, and sometimes it works out great, but there's a lot of times, and I would specifically say when those teams lost, overall, that's when it really hits them into trouble, and I think that's kind of what Nixel was doing for some of where they showed up late, 15 minutes late with Starbucks or something, or the Overwatch equivalent of Starbucks, whatever you want to call it. And it went out to hurt them in the end, because I don't think their time management was on point this match.
So the analyst desk went with Birdring for MVP, but in your mind, who was your MVP of this match?
I know they said Birdring on stream, but for me, it's definitely Prophet. Prophet has been able to get clutch kills, not only in this grand final, in the past, 10 hours or so, but also throughout the stage. He's been such a shining light for the Spitfire, and his Junkrat is second to one, I would say. I do honestly think that Jake has the best Junkrat in the league, but Prava has been able to really get these clutch kills, and especially on Arc and Jonak this series. He absolutely had their number through this, and it was just really awesome to see this kind of surgical incision of an entire rip tire. It was really awesome to watch that unfold, and I think it was very fitting that Prophet got that final impactful kill. I know there was cleanup on the payload, but basically I think Prophet's kill on Arc, the rip tire, and it almost got Jonak if it wasn't for that meddling Transcendence, but that final rip tire kill, I think, was the moment that Spitfire sealed their fate and Spitfire became champions, because that was the absolute needed kill. And Prophet went through, and Prophet came out with the clutch, and that was really awesome. And just in general, by the way, I do think that it's really fitting that the final kill of the final impactful kill of Owl Stage 1 is a Mercy, because that Mercy meta, say goodbye, kids, in memoriam. And I do think Mercy will have a place, but I don't think it'll be as prominent as a place as what we've seen in Stage 1. Actually, I can almost guarantee that will not be a case. No one really knows where the meta is going next, which is really awesome, because it'll diversify pick rates, it'll diversify the meta, of course, and it will also help some of the more struggling teams, I think, because when it comes to the Mercy meta, it's not necessarily who's the best player as much as who's the best Mercy. And I don't think that's the case in a lot of other metas that have come before this, and I'm sure in the metas that will come after this. But yeah, I do think it was very fitting that it was a Mercy that was the last impactful death And I'm very interested and very excited to see what stage two can do. Because I think we're going to be seeing a lot more upsets. I think teams are going to come out swinging, and hopefully, the teams that we thought were down and out are going to come back stronger than ever and possibly even win it. Because hey, everyone thought Uprising was out, everyone thought Outlaws were out, everyone thought Fusion was out, and those guys are some of the best in the league. And they took them by surprise in stage one. So I'm really looking forward to seeing some of the other quote lesser teams or like weaker teams come out swinging and really, really cement their place in owl history in stage two.
My thanks to Moirai for stopping by on the show and breaking down the grand finals for us. Make sure to follow her on Twitter at MoiraiOW. You can also read a lot of her articles on winstonslab.com. So make sure to check that out. We're going to be back Wednesday with another show, and I may or may not have a surprise in store for that one. So make sure to stay tuned for that. We've got a 10-day break before the next bout of Overwatch League matches. If you like the show, make sure to subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, or your podcast app of choice so you don't miss future episodes. You can also watch or listen to the show on the front page of winstonslab.com. And also, of course, you can find links to everything at overwatchleaguedaily.com. If you have a question or comment for the show, please email me, overwatchleaguedaily@gmail.com. Again, thanks to Moirai for stopping by on the show. Make sure to follow her again. I'll be back on Wednesday with another episode, technically episode 51 of Overwatch League Daily.